Palestinian Christians are Christian citizens of the State of Palestine and number some 38,000. In the wider definition of Palestinian Christians, including the Palestinian refugees, diaspora and people with full or partial Palestinian Christian ancestry, this can be applied to an estimated 500,000 people worldwide as of the year 2000. Palestinian Christians belong to one of a number of Christian denominations, including Eastern Orthodoxy, Oriental Orthodoxy, Catholicism, Anglicanism, Lutheranism, other branches of Protestantism and others. They number 6 to 7% of the 12 million Palestinians. 70% live outside Palestine and Israel, in both the local dialect of Palestinian Arabic and in Classical Arabic and Modern Standard Arabic. Christians are called Nazrana or Masihi. Hebrew speakers call them Notzri, which means Nazarene. As of 2015, Palestinian Christians comprise approximately 1 to 2.5% of the population of the West Bank, and less than 1% in the Gaza Strip, according to official British mandatory estimates. Palestine's Christian population in 1922 constituted 9.5% of the total mandatory Palestine population, and 7.9% in 1946. A large number of Arab Christians fled or were expelled from the Jewish-controlled areas of mandatory Palestine during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, and a small number left during the period of Jordanian control of the West Bank for economic reasons. From 1967, during the Israeli military rule, the Palestinian Christian population had increased in excess of the continued emigration. There are also many Palestinian Christians who are descendants of Palestinian refugees from the post-1948 era who fled to Christian-majority countries and formed large diasporan Christian communities. Worldwide, there are nearly 1 million Palestinian Christians in these territories as well as in the Palestinian diaspora, comprising over 10% of the world's total Palestinian population. Palestinian Christians live primarily in Arab states surrounding historic Palestine and in the diaspora, particularly in Latin America, Europe and North America. Demographics and denominations. 1922. In the 1922 census of Palestine there were approximately 73,000 Christian Palestinians, 46% Orthodox, 20% Roman Catholic, and 20% Eastern Catholic. The census recorded over 200 localities with a Christian population. The totals by denomination for all of mandatory Palestine were: Greek Orthodox 33,369, Syriac Orthodox 813, Roman Catholic 14,245, Greek Catholic 11,191, Syrian Catholic 323, Armenian Catholic 271, Maronite 2,382, Armenian Orthodox 2,939, Coptic Church 297, Abyssinian Church 85, Church of England 4,553, Presbyterian Church 361, Protestants 826, Lutheran Church 437, Templars Community 724, others 208. Modern day. In 2009, there were an estimated 50,000 Christians in the Palestinian territories, mostly in the West Bank, with about 3,000 in the Gaza Strip. Of the total Christian population of 154,000 in Israel, about 80% are designated as Arabs, many of whom self-identify as Palestinian. The majority of Palestinian Christians live in the Palestinian diaspora. diaspora. Around 50% of Palestinian Christians belong to the Orthodox Church of Jerusalem, one of the 15 churches of Eastern Orthodoxy. This community has also been known as the Arab Orthodox Christians. There are also Maronites, Melkite, Eastern Catholics, Jacobites, Chaldeans, Roman Catholics, Syriac Catholics, Orthodox Copts, Catholic Copts, Armenian Orthodox, Armenian Catholic, Quakers, Methodists, Presbyterians, Anglicans, Lutherans, Evangelicals, Pentecostals, Nazarene, Assemblies of God, Baptists and other Protestants, in addition to small groups of Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons and others. The Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem, Theophilus III, is the leader of the Palestinian and Jordanian Orthodox Church of Jerusalem, but Israel has refused to recognize his appointment. If confirmed, he would replace Patriarch Irenaeus, whose status within the church became disputed after a term surrounded by controversy and scandal given that he sold Palestinian property to Israeli Orthodox Jews. Archbishop Theodosios of Sebastia is the highest-ranking Palestinian clergyman in the Orthodox Patriarchate of Jerusalem. The Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Fuatual, is the leader of the Roman Catholics in Jerusalem, Palestine, Jordan, Israel and Cyprus. The Anglican bishop in Jerusalem is Suhail Diwani, who replaced Bishop Rairabu al-Asal. Elias Chakor, a Palestinian refugee of the Melkite Eastern Catholic Church, is Archbishop of Haifa, Acre and Galilee. Bishop Dry Munabunan is the president of the Lutheran World Federation and the bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land. History, background and early history. The first Christian communities in Roman Palestine were Aramaic-speaking Messianic Jews and Latin and Greek-speaking Romans and Greeks, who were in part descendants from previous settlers of the regions such as Syro-Phoenicians, Aramaeans, Greeks, Persians, and Arabs such as Nabateans, contrary to other groups of Oriental Christians such as Nestorians. The vast majority of Palestinian Christians went under the ecclesiastical jurisdiction of the Ecumenical Patriarchate and Roman emperors after the Council of Chalcedon in 451 AD, and were known by other Syrian Christians as Melkites. The Melkites were heavily Hellenized in the following centuries, abandoning the distinct Western Aramaic languages in favor of Greek. By the 7th century, Jerusalem and Byzantine Palestine became the epicenter of Greek culture in the Orient. Soon after the Muslim conquests, the Melkites began abandoning Greek for Arabic, a process which made them the most Arabicized Christians in the Levant. Most Palestinian Christians nowadays see themselves as culturally and linguistically Arab Christians with ancestors dating back to the first followers of Christ. They claim descent from a mixture of Jews and Gentiles who converted to Christianity in the first few centuries AD, Romans, Ghassanid Arabs, Byzantines, and Crusaders. The region consisting mainly of modern Israel and the fledgling state of Palestine is considered to be the Holy Land by Christians. Major Christian holy cities such as Bethlehem, Nazareth, and Jerusalem are located in Israel and the state of Palestine. But Christian Arabs in Palestine see themselves as Arab nationalistically reflects also the fact that, as of the beginning of the 20th century, they shared many of the same customs as the Muslim neighbors. In some respects, this was a consequence of Christians adopting what were essentially Islamic practices, many of which were derived of Sharia. In others, it was more the case that the customs shared by both Muslims and Christians derived from neither faith, but rather were a result of a process of syncretization, whereby what had once been pagan practices were later redefined as Christian and subsequently adopted by Muslims. This was especially evident in the fact that Palestine's Muslims and Christians shared many of the same feast days, in honor of the same saints, even if they referred to them by different names. Shrines dedicated to Saint George, for instance, were transformed into shrines honoring Khidr Ilyas, a conflation of the prophet Elijah and the mythical sprite Khidr. Added to this, many Muslims viewed local Christian churches as saints' shrines. Thus, for instance, a Muslim woman having difficulties conceiving, for instance, might travel to Bethlehem to pray for a child before the Virgin Mary. It was even not uncommon for a Muslim to have his child baptized in a Christian church, in the name of Qadr. Modern history. The category of Palestinian Arab Christian came to assume a political dimension in the 19th century as international interest grew, and foreign institutions were developed there. The urban elite began to undertake the construction of a modern multi-religious Arab civil society. When the British received from the League of Nations a mandate to administer Palestine after World War I, many British dignitaries in London were surprised to discover so many Christian leaders in the Palestinian Arab political movements. The British authorities in the Mandate of Palestine had difficulty understanding the commitment of the Palestinian Christians to Palestinian nationalism. Palestinian Christian-owned Falastin was founded in 1911 in the then Arab-majority city of Jaffa. The newspaper is often described as one of the most influential newspapers in historic Palestine, and probably the nation's fiercest and most consistent critic of the Zionist movement. It helped shape Palestinian identity and nationalism and was shut down several times by the Ottoman and British authorities, most of the time due to complaints made by Zionists. The Nakba left the multi-denominational Christian Arab communities in disarray. They had little background in theology, their work being predominantly pastoral, and their immediate task was to assist the thousands of homeless refugees. But it also sowed the seeds for the development of a liberation theology among Palestinian Arab Christians. There was a differential policy of expulsion. More lenience was applied to the Christians of the Galilee, where expulsion mostly affected Muslims. At Tarshiha, Melia, Deir al-Kasi, and Salaban, Christians were allowed to remain while Muslims were driven out. At Ikrit and Ba'im, the IDF ordered Christians to evacuate for a brief spell, an order that was then confirmed as a permanent expulsion. Sometimes in a mixed Druze Christian village like Al-Rama, only the Christians were initially expelled towards Lebanon, but, thanks to the intervention of the local Druze, were permitted to return. Important Christian figures were sometimes allowed to return on condition they help Israel among the communities. Archbishop Hakim, with many hundreds of Christians, was allowed re-entry on expressing a willingness to campaign against communists in Israel and among his flock. After the War of 1948, the Christian population in the West Bank, under Jordanian control, dropped slightly, largely due to economic problems. This contrasts with the process occurring in Israel, where Christians left en masse after 1948. Constituting 21% of Israel's Arab population in 1950, they now make up just 9% of that group. These trends accelerated after the 1967 war in the aftermath of Israel's takeover of the West Bank and Gaza. After the 1967 war, Christians within the Palestinian Authority constituted around 1 in 75 residents. In 2009, Reuters reported that 47,000–50,000 Christians remained in the West Bank, with around 17,000 following the various Catholic traditions and most of the rest following the Orthodox Church and other Eastern denominations. Both Bethlehem and Nazareth Nazareth, which were once overwhelmingly Christian, now have Muslim majorities. Today about 3/4 of all Bethlehem Christians live abroad, and more Jerusalem Christians live in Sydney, Australia than in Jerusalem. Christians now comprise 2.5% of the population of Jerusalem. Those remaining include a few born in the Old City when Christians that constituted a majority. In a 2007 letter from Congressman Henry Hyde to President George W. Bush, Hyde stated that the Christian community is being crushed in the mill of the bitter Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and at expanding Jewish settlements in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, were irreversibly damaging the dwindling Christian community. There have been reports of attacks on Palestinian Christians in Gaza from Muslim extremist groups. Gaza pastor Manuel Musalim has voiced doubts that those attacks were religiously motivated. The Palestinian president, Prime Minister, Hamas and many other political and religious leaders condemned such attacks. Fr. Pier Battista Pizzabella, the custodian of the Holy Land, a senior Catholic spokesman, has stated that police inaction and an educational culture that encourages Jewish children to treat Christians with contempt has made life increasingly intolerable for many Christians. Fr. Pizzabella's statement came after pro-settler extremists attacked a Trappist monastery in the town of Latran, setting fire to its door and covering walls with anti-Christian graffiti denouncing Christ as a monkey. The incident followed a series of acts of arson and vandalism in 2012 targeting places of Christian worship, including Jerusalem's 11th-century Monastery of the Cross, where slogans such as "Death to Christians" and other offensive graffiti were daubed on its walls. According to an article in The Telegraph, Christian leaders feel that the most important issue that Israel has failed to address is the practice of some ultra-Orthodox Jewish schools to teach children that it is a religious obligation to abuse anyone in holy orders they encounter in public, such that ultra-Orthodox Jews, including children as young as 8, spit at members of the clergy on a daily basis. After Pope Benedict XVI's comments on Islam in September 2006, 5 churches not affiliated with either Catholicism of the Pope, among them an Anglican and an Orthodox church, were firebombed and shot at in the West Bank and Gaza. A Muslim extremist group called Lions of Monotheism claimed responsibility. Former Palestinian Prime Minister and current Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh condemned the attacks, and police presence was elevated in Bethlehem, which has a sizable Christian community. Armenians in Jerusalem, identified as Palestinian Christians or Israeli Armenians, have also been attacked and received threats from Jewish extremists. Christians and clergy have been spat at, and one Armenian archbishop was beaten and his centuries-old cross broken. In September 2009, 2 Armenian Christian clergy were expelled after a brawl erupted with a Jewish extremist for spitting on holy Christian objects. In February 2009, a group of Christian activists within the West Bank wrote an open letter asking Pope Benedict XVI to postpone his scheduled trip to Israel unless the government changes its treatment. They highlighted improved access to places of worship and ending the taxation of church properties as key concerns. The Pope began his 5-day visit to Israel and the Palestinian Authority on Sunday, the 10th of May, planning to express support for the region's Christians. In response to Palestinian public statements, Israeli Foreign Ministry spokesman Yigal Palmor criticized the political polarization of the papal visit, remarking that he will serve the cause of peace much better if this visit is taken for what it is, a pilgrimage, a visit for the cause of peace and unity. In November 2009, Berlanti Azam, a Palestinian Christian student from Gaza, was expelled from Bethlehem and was not allowed to continue her studying. She had 2 months left for the completion of her degree. Berlanti-Azam said the Israeli military handcuffed her, blindfolded her, and left her waiting 4 hours at a checkpoint on her way back from a job interview in Ramallah. She described the incident as frightening, and claimed Israeli officials treated her like a criminal and denied her an education because she is a Palestinian Christian from Gaza. In April 2014, IDF began to send enlistment notices to Christian Arab youths of military age, informing them of the possibility of joining the military. During 2013, enlistment from the Christian population has been on the rise, with 84 new recruits between July and December that year. As of December 2013, there were approximately 140 Christians serving in the IDF, with another 400 in the reserves. Father Gabriel Nadaf from Nazareth, who established the Forum for Christian Enlistment to the IDF and one of the most active advocates of Christian Arab enlistment, welcomed the step and said he was certain it would help increase the numbers of Christian youth volunteering for service. See also Christianity in Israel section Sons of the New Testament Party. In July 2014, during Operation Protective Edge, an Israeli Arab Christian demonstration was held in Haifa in a protest against Muslim extremism in the Middle East, and in support of Israel and the IDF. Christian Arabs are one of the most educated groups in Israel. Maariv has described the Christian Arab sectors as the most successful in education system, since Christian Arabs fared the best in terms of education in comparison to any other group receiving an education in Israel. Christian Arabs have one of the highest rates of success in the matriculation examinations, both in comparison to the Muslims and the Druze and in comparison to all students in the Jewish education system as a group. Arab Christians were also the vanguard in terms of eligibility for higher education, and they have attained a bachelor's degree and academic degree more than the median Israeli population. Christian schools in Israel went on strike in 2015 at the beginning of the 2015 academic year in protest at budget cuts aimed at them. The strike affected 33,000 pupils, 40% of them Muslim. In 2013, Israel covered 65% of the budget of Palestinian Christian schools in Israel, a figure cut that year to 34%. Christians say they now received a third of what Jewish schools receive, with a shortfall of $53 million. The rate of students studying in the field of medicine was also higher among the Christian Arab students, compared with all the students from other sectors. The percentage of Arab Christian women who are higher education students is higher than other sectors. In September 2014, Israel's Interior Minister signed an order that the Aramean Christian minority in Israel could register as Arameans rather than Arabs. The order will affect about 200 families.